Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Emphasis from the Talking to Myself podcast, and I'm gonna get right into it. So, Blacc Sam sat down with Big Boy for his first interview since the passing of Nipsey Hussle. It's already been 5 years now. It was to me, it was an excellent interview. I thought Big Boy did a really good job. I usually don't even watch interviews like that anymore, but I definitely thought Big Boy did a good job conducting the interview. It provided a lot of insight on who Blacc Sam was, because for the most part, he was always the low key person in the background. He was always by Nipsey's side, but you never heard him go into too much detail about himself or how things happened from his perspective. But he mentioned that there's a documentary coming soon on Nipsey Hussle's life, which I'm curious where they're gonna release the documentary on. Or like, is it gonna come out on Netflix or Hulu, or is it just gonna be straight on their website? And it's cool to see Nipsey get that type of recognition. It's just a shame that it only happened after he passed away, because while he was alive, he was somewhat popular. Like, he was fairly popular, but he wasn't the superstar that he became after his passing. Because once he passed away, he was elevated to like a iconic legendary status, and most people weren't giving him that the attention that he deserved earlier in the process. But I mean, it is what it is. It was cool to see Sam kind of talk about their childhood and talk about how Nipsey was gifted from an early stage, building a computer himself, and how they used to try to resell candy and all that type of stuff. So it's very interesting to see the type of natural entrepreneurial tendencies that both Sam and Nipsey had. But Big Boy asked really a lot of important questions. But towards the end of the interview, Big Boy basically asked what happened to Nipsey Hussle on that day from his perspective. Like, what happened? Sam mentioned how the night before they were talking about how they wanted to move differently and up their security and you know be a little more careful. And then also he mentioned sleeping at his granny's house on the floor when he got a phone call that Nipsey had got shot. He hinted at the situation being a setup, which I think most people assumed it was, because even like from the time when it happened, when all the stories started coming out about the guy showing up and then leaving and then coming back and shooting, that clearly sounds like a premeditated, that sounded like a premeditated assassination. A lot of people believe that Big U probably played a role in that. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you. There's a lot of money in chaos, and there's a lot of people that would rather keep certain environments chaotic for their own benefit, honestly. Even when you look at the world at large, like, there's way more money in people, and there's way more money for like banks and governments in keeping the general public, broke in debt in a chaotic state, compared to if they try to let everybody just be prosperous and happy. I think the same thing could be applied to Big U and the streets as a whole, especially when it comes to hip hop. And I've been saying for a while now that I think the streets are an outdated concept in hip hop, honestly. I get pushback on that sometimes when I say that to people, because a lot of people, they don't want to let it go. But again, I personally believe it's an outdated concept. It should have never existed, but that's neither here nor there. It's still an outdated concept that has a very weird dynamic, because on one hand, the hood wants these street heroes, like these hometown heroes, almost like they kind of want them to be like a Jesus figure who could like save everybody. But then at the same time, these same people that want you to be their hometown hero and for you to save them, they'll turn around and assassinate those same heroes. That's exactly what we saw happen to Nipsey Hussle. Like, Nipsey was clearly positioning himself to be a major asset to the community, whether it was getting parks built or getting parks fixed up, opening up the marathon store, hiring young teenagers or guys in their early 20s who might have been in juvie or might have briefly been in jail, giving them a job at the marathon store so they could get back on their feet now that they're out of jail. At one point, Nipsey was claiming that they wanted to build like an apartment complex on top of the store itself. Like that's somebody who sounds like he has a bigger plan in play and is clearly an asset to that community. But these same communities have no interest in protecting assets. I don't know if it's that they don't have interest in protecting assets or if they just can't identify an asset to begin with, but it gotta be they have no interest in protecting assets because they know the person's an asset because they're always trying to use them. They're always trying to take pictures with the person. They're always they always smile in that person's face when they show up. But then when it's time to actually make sure nothing happens to that person, everybody just turns a blind eye. Even when you look at the clip of the day that Nipsey's life was taken away, it didn't seem like anybody was really that interested in making sure he was protected. Everybody just kind of looked out for themselves, which is a shame to see considering what he was trying to be to that community. But that community didn't, at the end of the day, no matter how much they say they loved him, they didn't prioritize making sure he could reach his full potential and help as many of them as he could. Like a guy like Eric Holder shouldn't have been allowed within 100 feet of somebody like Nipsey. Like you're talking about a guy whose his literal nickname is Shitty Cuz. Like and and I have a hard time believing people didn't already know how he got down because people always gossip about everybody else anyway. You're telling me nobody knew that he was a type of person that was capable of this? Like I find that very hard to believe. Or maybe they did know, but they underestimated the situation because according to Blacc Sam, he initially came seeming like he wasn't trying to cause any problems and he wasn't trying to be a threat, but still, again, I just can't imagine if you see somebody as an asset to your community, why you would let anybody like that come around at all. But again, I'm not from the West Coast, but that's in general still, no matter where you're from, that just doesn't seem like a good idea. So I guess the real question I have with this video is just do the streets or does the hood really deserve a hometown hero? Or cuz I've talked to many people over the years and that's typically what a lot of artists who make it to a certain level, that's kind of what they're viewed as, like somebody that can inspire a bunch of people from those same communities, but it you have I have to ask those questions just because so often you see the same ending. You see a Nipsey Hussle type of situation where he had a high amount of faith in an environment in a community that I guess hindsight is 2020, but this is clearly an environment that he shouldn't have had that much faith in to show up without security. But things played out how they played out, and the rest is history. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below.